That actually gets me to record. Really weird, but I'll take it. Okay. Well, welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're coming in from. We will be trying to keep this as, again, usual fashion for our outline is we'll kind of go over state of affairs. We'll talk about it. We'll do a couple topics, and then we'll open the floor up to any questions. Excuse me. So I guess to start off with a quick lay of the lands, while I do some boom. All right, cool. We'll let that go how it may be. All right. So I'm just going to kind of show something off here on my screen, and let me switch my thing here. Cool, that worked. So just to give another quick update, the Zone 2s themselves are still progressing well. For those who may or may not have heard yet, I know we mentioned this, I believe, last meeting, so excuse me, still getting over my respiratory thing. But we have NRE that ended up doing the merge into NXN, and so that kind of frees up at least one alliance at Hollandale. So again, it's NXN, SORP, and NASTi, and then DMN. When we go over to Lorcan, it is DS1, it's NAPS, and then NWO. However, NWO, from my understanding, is working on finalizing a merger. I believe if everything goes through, it most likely will be going into Tune. And just for some clarity there as well, I again do like this move. This was something I recommended mainly because of NW and Tune were kind of 7 and 8. So I liked the opportunity that it presented because it gave us a chance to do a little more power balancing from the bottom, or at least the lowest two ranked family alliances, even though they were still active, but being able to combine that overall activity I think was good. And so hopefully once everything goes through, I have, and again, everyone starts making the move over, I have no doubt in my mind that they'll probably be somewhere close to that 500 mark, which I think is great. I mean, if you look at where NASA is getting close to hitting 500, we have 4 other alliances that are already at 500. So we'll have 5, and this potentially could be 6, which I think is still a good even number. Right, bearing in mind one of the reasons why we came in with a lot of alliances is so we could have those opportunities to merge if we needed to between ourselves, even though thankfully we've been able to, I think, do a really good job of looking for opportunities to merge with other alliances before we do those with our internal team, which is really always the hope. So really starting off with a lot of alliances you can look as kind of like the backup to the backup, right? If you just truly have exhausted all of the active players in a kingdom, whether that's them wanting to kind of still do their own thing or those that are interested in merging or joining other alliances, and then outside of actually looking for other merges or merge opportunities with groups, other alliances. So again, that's kind of one of the good reasons why that's there. Then we end up going to Agoru. I believe, and I think CHRM, from what I understand, is going to most likely fill into NWO, so that'll be something there. IBKY and BBGT over here from Darlin to Forgotten Lands have already been filling into some of the other alliances, so we kind of get to Agoru, and NL65 still looking good on their end, NO65, and then we got Tune over here, right? So nothing's really changed on that front. So that kind of covers our kind of just quick state of affairs for how the kingdom overall is looking. I guess one other thing I could touch on, if I zoom in enough here, is just kind of looking at the overall alliance power, right? So we have, excuse me, dying, I'm dying. Oh, God. Oh, gosh, my apologies. So we have 8 alliances that are over 300 mil. We have 11 alliances, which I think is down 1. I believe last time we had 12 at the previous meeting. But now we have 11 alliances that are over 200 mil, specifically over 250. I think BBGT, 65CK, NRE, right? Some of these other alliances here, right? A lot of those players are like the core, I would say, kind of competitive, more engaged players are looking to move up. So, there's already been quite a bit of movement when it comes to condensing it a little bit higher. But still, I think having 11 alliances at this point at 250 mil and over, even just the 8 at 350 and over, I think is still really good for where we are right now. If we look at personal power, we can see for our, top 200, this previously was around 4.7 something. So again, we're going up. Our number 200 is almost at 5 mil. So I think that's really good. Resources farmed for our top 200. If we scroll down, 227, almost 228 mil. So I think that's relatively good for what I usually see. As far as Dragon Trail goes, we have 18 people that have maxed out Dragon Trail thus far. If we look at the number 200, we're at 233. I actually don't think that's bad. Shocking my T1 isn't making me that far. But again, outside of that, I think there's a lot of good things right now that are going for 65, and hopefully we can keep it in that general direction going into Season 2. So let me touch on now, if I can, the DS1 diplomacy. So we've had kind of 2 conversations thus far. Both of those conversations have been provided to our management team for transparency, and so we are able to communicate that with them. I'm not sure if I will make those public or not. Really, it's mainly just so the people who were not able to attend could be aware of what was talked about. So I believe the latest one was just posted this morning. And again, that's something that is just privy at the moment to leaders and officers. So again, those who were not able to attend can listen in and, again, have at least some update heads up on kind of how those went. To summarize, the meeting that we had last night, I think lasted about an hour and a half, hour 45. I thought for the most part it was pretty productive. The big talking points there was discussing Zone 1 allocation in Nivola for DS1 looking to try and occupy or fill some of the dead space, just because there have been submergers. For all intents and purposes, NXN is really the only kind of main active alliance there. So it was a matter of trying to figure out how we could how they could get some more behemoths in that region without having to disrupt NXN and their current flagging path or territory. So Barcode, who attended that there, I think has a good game plan that he's talked to Trip about, and then filled me in. So I think they have a good idea as far as where they're kind of going from there. Again, we'll have to kind of see and wait for how, again, if everything ends up kind of being approved and going forward, but it's something that Trip and them were okay with. And so, again, I just kind of chimed in and gave my thoughts, but it seemed like they did a lot of the good legwork already. So I'm happy to see at least how that will develop and go. When we get to a little bit farther along in the conversation beyond Zone 1, we kind of got to a little bit of Zone 2 things. There was some goodwill that was extended by NWO and Croc for moving a couple flags that were essentially just kind of in the territory or the space of I believe it was a behemoth, just north of a behemoth, but there was, I think, just a few flags that were kind of in that high RSS zone for tile spawning. And again, bearing in mind it was something that the DS1 leadership agreed to before any flagging was done. Again, I understand it from kind of a minor adjustment point, because, if they can gather tiles or higher higher level tiles on territory or off. That's just not on another's territory, right? That more of a visual thing, really, at the end of the day. But Croc was kind enough to make the accommodation, even though it wasn't necessarily having to. Right? It was nice for that kind of goodwill to be extended. From there, we then talked a little bit, and probably the bulk of the discussion, I believe, really was more about Zone 3, which is pretty much where it came to. The approach that Kratos had pitched was wanting to essentially have Zone 3 kind of be a war zone in some type of free-for-all capacity, along with fighting it out for the dragon. And we, thankfully, I think the conversation progressed well enough to a point where I was able to, where I was able to kind of explain some things to them and just, again, inform a little bit more of, what some of the dangers are of doing a kind of pure free-for-all in Zone 3, regardless of how many days that might entail. And again, the management team will be aware of how that conversation went. But in short, I think there was a good job of explaining some of the pros and cons of doing that, along with us trying to stay as close to what we promised everyone in the project that we would do, which, again, our whole idea was to try and have war games, right? That's what we wanted to do, was to have war games in Zone 3, along with the current PvP rules, which is that anyone can PvP anytime they want. It just has to be agreed upon. Doesn't matter what size, how many alliances, just as long as it's agreed upon. And I think when you start seeing some of these final mergers happening prior to Zone 3, you'll start noticing that because the power is closer and the gap is smaller from the top to, the lower ranked active alliances still, that will also be a form of encouragement to motivate players and hopefully give them a little bit more comfortability when it comes to, being willing to go out there and fight. Nothing is more depressing than the visual aid or the visual of seeing, a 500 mil alliance and then you have a 200 mil alliance, right? It's a little bit more challenging to try and sell people on going out to fight because of big power differences as well. Same thing could be said if there's a disproportion of power amongst the top players, where you're seeing consolidation within one or two alliances. That can also dissuade. There's actually quite a few reasons that would dissuade players from being willing to go out there and fight. This is why this has always been such a big focal point for the project when it comes to navigating the limitations that the game's mechanics are enabled, I guess, if you will, that we kind of just have to maneuver around as best we can. And some of those things can happen early, some of those things can happen later. But the kind of ending point for Zone 3 was us essentially just saying that, well, look, the majority of our group doesn't want to do pure free-for-all PvP, where they have to worry about their farmers being hit or their open field marches being hit at any point in time. Also, stalling and stagnating one's gathering and one's resource accumulation is very impactful. The majority of the players in our kingdom are free-to-play or low-spend, which is pretty much the case in every kingdom. The minority is always going to be the people that are kind of medium to high spend, which is just standard in kingdom builders. And so it typically tends to be that the minority are usually the ones who want, kind of all-out war. They just want to fight to their heart's content. And one of the positions that I approach from is, it's kind of like the punching down, punching up effect, right? If you're among the strongest players in the kingdom, you're always punching down, right? So it's easier, right, for you to have a good time and enjoy on average, rather than it is the players who are lower power than you, and they're usually having to punch up the farther you go down the leaderboards. And so sometimes that can't be as enjoyable, especially when you're doing like a pure free-for-all where it's, in most cases, usually isolated 1v1s, right? You might have 20, 30, 40, 50 people out in the field, but it doesn't mean that they're usually fighting together. Typically, when you see like pure free-for-alls in Zone 3s and Rock and or in other Kingdom builders like Forbidden Zones and Infinity Kingdom, you're typically seeing, like, again, isolated 1v1s that's happening, or even 1v2s or 2v2s, but it's not usually, you're not going into a free-for-all and saying, hey, we're going to get together with 10, 20, 30 people and just run around and mob everybody, right? Because, I mean, that would be worse if you think about it, right? If anything, that would dissuade more people from wanting to show up and to fight. So some of those were, my kind of counterpoints, or just my approach that I brought up. One of the things that I also mentioned, which I think, at least I hope, is probably what I should say, made a lot more sense when I had explained this. One of the things Kratos was saying towards the end of the conversation was that, however many of his players were just really wanting to fight, and he wanted to give them that option so they could see how taxing, how draining it would be as a way to try and show them that, hey, trying something out a different way would probably be better instead of doing it this way, right? So it was kind of like his approach to that was like, hey, let's do this so we can show their players that this isn't the best way to do it, kind of a deal. And I'm paraphrasing, of course, but my counter, my view on it is I use the example of, well, we kind of have already done that. If you look at how the Zone War 1 played out, where basically everyone was able to fight to their heart's content at that point between Nivola and Darlin against DS1. And what we ended up seeing is that after probably 2 or 3 days, people were drained. And I was seeing screenshots from players on both sides of the war, and people that were telling me, from people in DS1 and from people that were in our alliances, that, hey, I would just love to go back to farming. It's just not sustainable to fight for that long, especially in a home kingdom. A KVK or an SVS or a merge kingdom for Season 2, that's different, because you're going into it with the mindset of, hey, we're fighting. So it's an easier sell mentally to players that are going into that environment. And so after I had pointed that out, it was kind of like a resounding yes at that, a resounding understanding that the point I had made didn't really have a rebuttal at that time, just because you couldn't really disagree with that, right? You're doing a Zone 1 war, and you're basically already simulating exactly what Kratos was pitching in his proposal. And so my selling point there was, hey, look, we've already tried this, and we've already done it, and it's clear that the majority of people do not want to sit there and fight for a week, 2 weeks straight, because we have lost some people, I would imagine, on both sides that just didn't want to fight anymore. And so, because we've already tried this, why don't we try this way? Because we haven't tried this yet, and we can do this going into Zone 3, right? And that pitch was, in short, us doing the war games, allowing for players to farm as much as possible in Zone 3, and then doing more organized fights, but still allowing for enough PvP to happen based on those that want to participate in it. But also us encouraging people to participate by, again, writing out best practices, tips, how to take advantage, trying to get a lot of people in voice, setting, good days and times to do events that work well for a lot of players and a lot of alliances. So I think it's something that we can really sell to people, especially if our alliances are being consistent in sending mails, in doing markers, in messaging players, in our management teams coordinating and figuring out the days that we want to do that along with the other alliances in the kingdom. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And I think the biggest thing for me is it allows for us to keep our promise to the group that this is what we said we were going to do, because I imagine the majority of us understand the impacts of having free-for-all PvPs, or just lawless PvP, as I like to call it. It just doesn't really do any good for anyone. And it really only benefits the strongest players in the game. right? It's basically just a way for them to bully people. So that was, again, kind of my ending selling point to them. And the response I got is that they, again, pretty much agreed with the points that I made, because, I mean, you couldn't really disagree at that point. But it was nice to hear that there was at least an understanding from them on what I was saying. And it ended where Kratos said he's going to go and ask his players and then come back and kind of let us know, essentially, what they'd like to do. So I guess the thing I'll briefly comment on there, and this is just one of the reasons why I don't really believe in doing, I don't really believe in kind of doing player-led votes in a situation like this, just because the likelihood of the votes being skewed is very high, and that's just because because in order for someone to vote, they have to have a full understanding of a situation, and they have to know everything that goes into it, the pros and cons of each proposal, and it has to be fully explained to them. So that way, when they go in, they're going in and being able to make an informed decision, compared to, basically who knows if they'll do that or not. It could just be something as simple as, hey, do you want to fight and have war in Zone 3, or do you want to have controlled PvP? And if you say it like that, then, if you're one alliance and you're consolidating a lot of strong players, and, those, and however many want to fight, that can easily become a snowball effect, where players may just vote to fight because they don't understand the implications, the after effects, and the intricacies of what the true benefits are. So again, that's just something I just don't agree with, just because I think if you're doing votes like that for certain situations, it can very much skew the results. So again, hopefully they'll take time to properly explain the full pros and cons and the full understanding of what exactly a controlled PvP environment is, or I should say an organized PvP environment, and really how much PvP can happen, because it's not a little, it definitely will be a lot, but it also depends on, how many people do show up day in and day out, because it doesn't really make sense to do organized PvP every single day in Zone 3. Something like targeting weekends, as an example, like Saturdays and Sundays, I think are a little bit more doable to do those fun types of events. And then, if people want to organize many things kind of throughout the week, they're more than welcome to. But anyways, that's my spiel. And excuse me, I think for the most part is where we can then transition to kind of, so I talked about Zone 2, did a little Zone 3, Season 2. So some people have asked me about this for Season 2 when it comes to some of the alliances that have merged. I just want to point out that I'll probably have to do something there anyways. Excuse me. That the alliances who have merged, right, when we go into Season 2, we're going to end up having to split our current alliances probably up into 3, 4, 5 alliances, just depending on their sizes. So any of the alliances that have merged into others will also have opportunities to remake their alliances when we go into Season 2, because remember, keep in mind that when we go into Season 2, there's also going to be a lot of new players from all the kingdoms that we get merged with. So that also means that there's new and healthy recruiting potential from any of the regions that we start out in. Now, by me saying this, understand that depending on how much of a recruiting player pool is in the 1 or 2 regions that we'll start out in, there most likely will still be some merging that will have to happen. So just take that as kind of a realistic expectation that this is something that will happen, because I just don't believe there's ever going to be enough of a player pool for recruiting purposes from merged kingdoms where you're going to see, 200 or 300 players in a region that are just, yeah, we'll totally join your alliance kind of a thing. I think there will be some, but just not enough where all the alliances will be. So that's why it'll be important that we will most likely pre-select some alliances to kind of be the vanguard alliances that will funnel in the majority of our activity from. And then if it ends up being more than that, because maybe there is more of an active player pool and some of the other alliances that have started back up in season 2 are able to just fully replenish themselves, then that's even better. So this is just kind of more of a minimum expectation, but if we exceed that, fantastic, but kind of going in with a healthy approach. And I think that might be more or less it for me. So that brings us to about 25 minutes. So with that being said, I'm going to open the floor up now. So if anyone has any questions, you are more than welcome to ask in this K65 chat. If you'd like to come on and ask a question via voice, you're more than welcome to as well. And again, I'll answer as many as I can. I guess I'll briefly talk about some of the PvP and like the farming stuff, because I don't know if we have touched on that as kind of a town hall group yet. But let me get to just a few questions and I can throw that in here in a sec. Let's see. I think Croc has something for us. Hey, buddy.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself.
You're good.
It happens. So in the talk that we had last night, I think that you forgot to mention. I don't think I heard you say it, but I did bring up a good suggestion last night in our meeting with them, that we could do like a 3 to 5 day possible type of deal to where people can go in and fight in Zone 3, but that we needed to definitely have at least no less than 2 to 3 days of people being able to recover from fighting. Basically, like Monday through Thursday, Monday through Friday, whatever they decided they wanted to do. And the rest of the time, the people would need to recover so that they could keep on fighting and keep on doing stuff when it, I guess when it best suits them to be able to fight against, DS or whatever. You did also touch last night in talking to them that we don't really care about the dragon as much as they do. I know that they, brought that up definitely about wanting to have dragon. I know that this project and you yourself don't really care about that as much. We more or less want people to learn how to fight, especially going into next season for the merging, to be able to PvP against other kingdoms. And once again, I think the only best way to do that is, like we discussed last night, there has to be some type of form of fighting time, but then there has to be some type of recovery time, especially if we're going to be in Zone 3 for at least like 30 days. That just has to be available to not only the pay to win people or the mid spenders, but it also has to be towards the free to play people, because they're going to be using a ton of resources. They're going to be using a lot of speed ups, whatever the case may be, in order to keep on fighting, which a lot of people understand. NXN, NRE, NWO, NAPS a little bit, whoever else helped out in the war, okay, especially the alliances that were frontline like us three. We took a beating, and it cost us a lot. It cost a lot of people's resources. It cost a lot of people's speed ups. It just took a toll on everybody. So now we're talking about going into another war zone, basically like Zone 1, and going all out fighting. And I can tell you, we should learn from experience here that what happened in Zone 1 is going to kind of be like that in Zone 3, to where everybody's going to need that recovery time on top of the fighting time that they're going to be doing. So there has to be some type of, I guess, compromise agreement type of situation for me personally, for that to actually work out based off of what has happened with Zone 1 war and what we went through with DS already. We're going to go through the same thing in Zone 3. And then the other thing I have to say is, I know, and I don't want to take too much people's time. I'm actually in KVK right now. I don't want to take up that much time, but I do want to say that the merges are a good thing. We are actually finalizing right now our merge with Tune. I actually need somebody on R4, somebody in NAP to accept me. I'm at the door, been there for a while. We are actually merging into Tune as we speak. It's going to not only help us, but it's also going to help out Tune as far as activity, getting the behemoths, the war itself when it comes to Zone 3. I am realistic enough to know that come next season, like we discussed, being that a lot of alliances are going to be reset, and a lot of people are going to a lot of leaders that have merged into other alliances, they're going to go back to their alliances. Like us, we'll go back to NWO and we'll start over fresh. Okay. These are basically like temporary merges just to be able to make it through the rest of the season. And the next season, everybody kind of starts over. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of where we're at. Like I said, if somebody from Naps could please accept me, that way I can get to Tune easier. I would appreciate that. And that's about all I got to say.
Okie dokie. No, thanks, Croc. Yeah, my again, I know we touched on this a little bit yesterday in the meeting with them. The again, I think the view overall when it comes to I think when it comes to the amount of PvP is that it's easy to say. I think from anyone who believes or may feel that as a group or as a kingdom we need a lot of PvP. However, if we flip the script and we look at it from the opposite side, again in that scenario of having some type of free-for-all PvP, we also have to think about what are we asking, or better yet, what choice are we taking away from the player. Again, this is just in the scenario of if we were to do free-for-all PvP where anyone and everyone could be attacked in Zone 3, meaning any farmers, any open field marches, basically would just stop those players' accounts progression for however long it lasted for. And so, I think that, because again, HQ had, one of the things she had mentioned yesterday as well was, trying to give players as many options and choices, right? Trying not to limit a choice or an option for a player. However, I think what is more impacting is telling the players themselves that, hey, we're taking your choice away to farm and to develop your account, which will only benefit us as a kingdom overall in Season 2, because we just want to be able to attack you anytime we want, which is essentially what you're saying. And it's, like I was mentioning, is typically something that only really the strongest players want. You don't typically see the majority of people screaming out for free-for-all PvP, especially those that have played Kingdom Builders for a while. Like, they understand the impacts and the stagnating of a kingdom's overall development when you look at each individual player that would be going to Zone 3, along with Zone 3 just being full of high-level tiles. It's just, and again, I don't know if the villages scale as well in better buffs going as you go from Zone 1 to 2 to 3. That'd be interesting to know. I'm sure someone probably knows that. Probably Sneaky or someone. But generally speaking, giving Zone 3 is just a plentiful zone. It's where you want to try and fit as many people in realistically as possible. And if it becomes too crowded, then those players just gather in Zone 2. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. But by allowing for every single tile to essentially be occupied at all times during the day in Zone 3, like, that's really what the goal is there, so you can take advantage of the plentiful resource area. And so, this is one of the reasons why we typically defer away from having any type of free-for-all, like true free-for-all PvP. It's one of those things where any kingdom isn't going to have as many people show up to it as they think. Usually it's, again, it just is kind of a punching down effect. But when it comes to doing organized PvP and being able to do that for a number of days, throughout a week. I do think that's something a little more viable. Like I said, I think kind of pinpointing it at like a Saturday, Sunday, maybe a Friday through Sunday, but I think at least a Saturday, Sunday for hosting kind of fun war games. And then if people want to go and do any form of agreed upon or organized PvP in between that time, they're more than welcome to. That's the thing, is that, it's about giving everyone the choice to participate, but never taking that choice away from people. Because the fact is the majority of people do not want to do free-for-all PvP. And I think that was pretty apparent when we look at the reaction from the Zone 1 war. You yourself, Croc, along with Trip and Asteria and the officer team, told me this on multiple occasions. It's not sustainable, which just shows that, and I've had quite a few posts from you all throughout the time where it's like, look, our players are drained. They don't want to fight. They want to farm. So I think the answer is pretty clear if we look at the evidence leading up to now. It's telling us that, look, players just don't want to go all out and fight all day. Especially in the home kingdom, I should say. Like I've mentioned, Season 2 is different because you're going into a merged kingdom where fighting is going to happen by default. So it kind of goes without saying, at least in that regard. But yeah, so at least with that, I think doing things in moderation is really important, and having 3 or 4 days out of the week where we're just doing nothing but fighting, or we're expected to fight, I just think is unrealistic. I think you start off small, and then you can always go more from there, right? So starting off, I think, with like 2 days is a nice sweet spot on a Saturday, Sunday. And if you feel like, hey, you know what? We're getting amazing turnout, amazing attendance every Saturday and Sunday that we do something. And then we ask people, hey, would you guys like to do another type of war game on a Friday? And then we get an overwhelming and resounding yes, then cool, then we add a day. But taking baby steps and not trying to run before we can crawl first or walk, I think is a really good, appropriate way to do it. So we don't put that burden of unrealistic expectations on the players that, hey, you need to show up for all of these things. Because like I mentioned in the DS1 call, if you have players that are really going out there and fighting a lot, you might have people that go all in the first weekend that we do something, again, in this example, to a point where maybe a lot of their troops are in the hospital and they just want to focus on gathering. Maybe they skip the next weekend event, but then they come and participate to the weekend event after that. So those types of things are unforeseen. We don't know what's going to happen. Even if we do our best job of organizing and letting everyone know ahead of time, we might only get one weekend which might be the first weekend we do it in this example, where we get an amazing turnout. But then maybe the turnout is just slow and incremental over that time. And that could just be because maybe the players themselves don't want to come out and PvP that much. Maybe they would rather just focus on developing and leveling their account and putting themselves in a position where they can have the most amount of troops available and the most amount of RSS on hand in their storehouse for when the real war starts. So I think when we look at it like that, I think a more appropriate and realistic expectation is we'd love for people to come out for one weekend, and we'd love for them to be able to take away a lot of good information, a lot of good tips, a lot of good best practices, where they can gain a lot of experience from at least participating in one weekend. And of course, if they want to come every weekend or every day we do something, they're more than welcome to. But us being able to educate and inform the player base is probably one of the easier things, because really all it takes is for us is to, make a video or to write a mail up, right? And then just make sure that everyone reads it, and if they have questions, they ask. Simple enough. But again, as always, thank you for sharing, and I do appreciate your perspective. Sorry, guys. Let me look real quick. Okay, I'm good. Just trying to make sure I don't have anything going on. Okay, I'm dying. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm dying. Ooh. Sorry, I'm going to read some of the chat. 11. Okay. Sorry, let me try to catch up real quick. And again, if you're just joining us now, if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to ask. The thing I wanted to mention real quick about the free farming. So this is something I put out in an announcement where we talked about free farming versus having restricted farming. And for those of you that read that, again, we did talk about this with our management team. I think I also talked about this with some of the sort players as well. But my view on farming is pretty simple. COD isn't rock, so you don't get RSS that's going into your storehouse. The only thing you get is 25% increased gathering speed when you're gathering on territory, which, let's be real, I rarely gather on Alliance territory. Even though I'm on Alliance territory, I would say more than 50% of the tiles that I'm gathering from are on neutral excuse me, are on neutral territory or another Alliance's territory only if needed. So, and that's just because most players, when they're going to gather, they're not like individually searching for a tile to gather. They're just going into their search feature, selecting the tile level, and then clicking find. Like, that's it. And in most cases, it's going to search based on proximity or tiles that are closest to you. So, it's not as though anyone has any ill intentions to go and gather on another Alliance's tile. It's just understanding that it's a lot less work and a lot less burden than if we try to put restrictions on things such as, hey, you can never gather on another Alliance's territory. Just think about how many complaints some of you have already gotten from that, along with how many headaches some of you are either currently in or maybe just got out of. So again, it's just a lot of unnecessary work. When you have a free farming approach where you provide a guideline like we did, where we just tell people, hey, look, try and gather on your territory if you can. If not, neutral territory is the next step to look at. And worst case, if there's just no tiles that are there in that moment on your territory or neutral, then you can gather anywhere. And just taking that approach sets a better realistic expectation for less headache on the management team. Also less headache on the players that are out there, and will reduce the potential amount of fighting and skirmishing as well. Right. The most important thing is that we allow for every player in the kingdom to be able to gather freely as much as possible, because the more that everyone's consistently gathering and the less they're fighting over who has a tile or not has a tile, you're leveling your account. Every moment that you spend fighting, you're stagnating your account. You're stalling it on its development. So again, for me, that's always been my view on it. I just think it's completely unnecessary to kind of squabble, if you will, over who can gather on a tile or not. Again, I view it as in Rock, it is a little bit more impactful because there are obviously some inherent differences. So you can probably sell me a little bit more on telling people, hey, you can't gather on another Alliance's territory. But that's just not the case in COD. So, and in me saying that, respectfully, from this moment on, and I said this during the management meeting, if anyone comes to me with a complaint about, hey, this person was farming on my territory, I will kindly tell you in the most loving way to kick rocks, respectfully, and with a smile and a wink. Only because, again, I don't want the headache, and there's already a lot I have on my plate along with other players, especially those a part of our management team, and I don't think they want more work on their plate either. So my recommendation is, if someone is not aware that you come across of the free farming approach that we've talked about, again, I've also put a synchronized alliance mail out for all of the family alliances to send. So my expectation is that all of our family alliances have sent that mail. And if you haven't sent that mail yet, you hopefully will send it today or as early as possible, because that specifically does talk about and explains the benefits of free farming and how we can reduce the overall headache. So I'm great sipping some tea. But yeah, if there's any other questions, again, I need to scroll up too as well. I think there might have been a couple, but you guys are more than welcome to ask in the Townhall chat. I have to read through some. Oh, hang on. Someone's got a hand raise. Let me call. That was Rover. I still got to read through some other stuff. Yeah, I just invited you, Rover. Let me. I think you have to accept first. Let me see. Yes, I confirm rock type stuff. So I come from rock, so this type of stuff is easy to understand. Yeah, it pretty much is. Alpha Deer said if we intend to do free for all PvP, it should not be in Zone 3. I mean, to be honest, it just shouldn't be in any zone, in my opinion. What are these types of things? I mean, no snark. I don't fully understand what we're. What do you tend to want to? Oh yeah, no, I will. I mean, this is being recorded, so I'll probably upload this as a public video on my channel, so that way anyone could watch it. Alpha Deer's like, I'm definitely not suggesting that. Sorry, hang on. Did someone else give me another hand raise? Oh, here we go. Okay, I just invited you, Rover. I think you'll have to accept though. I don't know how that might come up on mobile. Yeah. I don't even know if I can manually move you. Can I? Oh, I can't. Move to... Yeah, no, I can't. Yeah, I think you have to be the one to accept. So I'm still reading right now. Let's see here. Boat said, basically what Bark said, organized PvP for the weekend and weekday is meant for recovery time. Yeah. So, look, if, another way to look at it is like this. If you want to gauge your true fighting capacity, well, I don't know if I say true, but you want to get a soft gauge on fighting capacity. The reason you do organized PvP is because it doesn't force anyone to fight, and they can choose if they want to come out and fight. And then you'll know, right, how many people, from a soft kind of initial water temperature check, are, engaged on the PvP side. But the hope is that that number will hopefully increase if they're not going all out and, burning through hundreds of thousands of troops, as an example, from week to week. Excuse me. Luminous says, we're not going into Zone 3 Assort, but this is interesting. I guess I'm confused. I don't know why you wouldn't be going in. I know the way I drafted the Zone 2 stuff was trying to have us with 9 alliances going in. I gotta look at the rankings real quick, though. Let's see here. Yeah, I think the idea was to try and have the top 9, and again, I know for a fact that pretty much these alliances, from like 15 to 10, I know for certain that those groups and players are starting. Some are starting and some have finished. They're merging. So really looking at a top 9 from SORP on up is ideal. Same thing with Kyle and NL. Same thing with DS1 in our group, right? So I actually think a top 9 could work really well in Zone 3. Sorry, just to clarify that. But basically, you guys would just have to build to the pass at that point, and then probably just drop a fort or something outside of the level 3 pass, and then that way the other alliance that if they did need to disconnect like one flag or something, they could just easily reconnect it after you guys get there, drop the fort, remove the flags, as an example. Sorry, I'm still reading real quick. I think I'm almost caught up here. Yeah, but we'll probably look at everything once. We'll probably look at everything once we get a little bit closer to that point too, as well. So, what am I doing? Okay, cool. I think I'm caught up. Well, with that being said, we're at 48, almost 49 minutes. So I will do one final call for any questions, thoughts, concerns, shade you would like to throw at people. Emotional or word battles we would like to engage in. So kind of just one final round here of open floor before we call it. Badges. Badges. Yeah, I think you have to click accept at the top from that. Oh, you can't click the prompt. Interesting. Fuck shit, this guy. He's like copying. Yeah, I am. That's so weird. I'm not sure on that because. Hang on. Let's. So what? I need to go take a cough drop. Jeez. 1 sec. Let's try this. I'll be able to give you a temp thing. Oops, hang on. Let's do it like this. Red. 1 moment. Okay, try now. Try to see if you can connect yourself now. Mass channel. I think that gave you perms. Speak. Yeah, see if you can come up. Well, no, I just gave you individual perms, so you might be able just to click it or join. Yeah, you also, yeah. So I invited you. You should be able just to move yourself, though, because I gave you perms. So I can try. In the worst case, if not, might just be better to type out the question at this point. Might have taken less time. Yeah, it's so weird, though. You did? Oh, sorry. What was the question? Oh, about the free farming thing? Yeah. I mean, I already touched on that. So, just so I don't necessarily have to repeat, it'll be in the VOD though. Once I finish or end the recording, so it'll be there for that. Alrighty. Well, listen, guys. If there and girls, of course, if there is nothing else, I'm gonna go ahead and end the recording now.